Here are 3 things that you want to keep in mind when you're creating your own training plan. Now, I'm making this video because a lot of people out there do not have enough money to pay for a coach. So if you're one of those people who either can't afford an expensive training plan or do not want to buy a coach, then I suggest you listen up. The 3 things are, and I'm going to be quick in this video: volume, how much you work out; intensity, how hard you work out; and frequency, how often you work out. Now, there's a slight distinction between volume and frequency. Volume is typically viewed in terms of either time or mileage, where frequency would be, day to day, or even if you're going to hit 2 workouts in a single day, called it 2 a day. Now, when you're making your first training plan, it's very important to know where you are in your fitness journey before you start to throw times and distances on your calendar. So for a complete beginner, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that you probably wouldn't want to be running more than 3 days a week. You probably wouldn't want to be cycling more than 3 days a week, and swimming is pretty easy on the joints, but you still probably wouldn't want to be doing that more than 3 days a week either. Now, the beautiful thing about triathlon is that if you are a beginner, you can throw shorter sessions of each of those main disciplines into your training regimen and still be within a healthy threshold of total weekly volume without impacting your body too much, just by cycling the different types of workouts that you could do in a week. Now, that was a mouthful, but here's the real practical part of this. So I'm going to use Ironman Triathlon as the benchmark for this video because that is what I personally do. Although these principles apply directly to really anything: marathon training, cycling, swimming. I like to use my running days and my long days, which, if you know anything about endurance events, a long day is really anything that would encompass a long run, hour and a half to 2 hour run, or a long ride, 2 hours to anywhere between 4 and 6 hours on a ride. And those will be the staples that I have in the week. And then knowing how my body is supposed to recover from a day like that, where it's low intensity, high volume, I'll then pick the appropriate days for my next run days to be the staple. So in my case specifically, and you can definitely steal this for your own training plan, because even the plans that I make are just a slightly more scientifically, between mileage and time, chosen variation of this exact framework. If my long run is on a Sunday, which it almost always is, then I'll usually have Monday as either a very light run or a cycling day, depending on the season. If I'm in an Ironman training block, then Monday, immediately following the long run, will be what's considered either a recovery or a maintenance run. That is a low intensity, low volume day. So for me, that'll be approximately built up to 50 minutes. Now, since I'm allowing my body to recover on the Monday, Tuesday will typically be a hard cycling day that often features intervals with the goal of increasing power output on the bike. Then Wednesday, and this is where, people can get into trouble, because if you're not ready for this type of training, then it could be a little bit tough on the body. But I'd say if you're a beginner, Wednesday would be another run of moderate intensity, moderate to high intensity. So you might run at your zone 2 pace for the beginning and the end of the run. And in the middle, you might sprinkle in some zone 3, zone 4 efforts. On my end, the way I would train a Wednesday following my bike interval day is I would basically make it either, excuse me, a track workout, very tough, but the goal of a track workout is to build speed and power in your run. Or I would make it a threshold run where similar beginning, where zone 2 beginning, zone 2 end, and in the middle period I'd be running at basically a threshold pace, where if you've seen some of my other videos or you want to continue to learn a bit more, then I suggest you subscribe. But for now, threshold pace, around 85% of your max power output. Now, Thursday, following that hard running day, will be an easy day on the bike. And that's a easy intensity, light intensity, somewhat higher volume. So probably between an hour and 15 minutes and an hour and a half for me once I get into the groove of my training again. That could take like a month, it could take 2 months, but really that's what I want to be holding as like a baseline for my Thursday. Friday will be my 1 day off for the week. Then Saturday is a brick workout typically. And if it's not a brick workout, then it's just a longer bike workout. And a brick would be, say, 2 hours to 3 hours on the bike, followed by a very low intensity 20 to 30 minute run. And then that brings us back to Sunday. And then Sunday would be another long run. Now you might notice that obviously that's 4 running days in the week. I just mentioned 3. But if you are starting out, you probably won't be starting out doing a brick. And even if you do opt to begin that type of training, the type of workout that or the type of run that you're doing following the cycling on the brick day or Saturday is usually so low intensity and low volume that it really only helps you add mileage onto your week and prepare your legs to run while tired after a bike effort. So that is essentially the framework for a typical week in Ironman training. And you might have noticed that there was no swim in there, and that is because for most of my Ironman training, I typically don't end up swimming too much. Like in this last block, I think I only swam about 3 months of the whole training block. And this next one, where obviously I'm shooting for a faster time and I have a bit more experience under my belt, I'll probably only be swimming for 5 months of the 8 or 9 month training block. When I do decide to swim, they typically aren't much more than 30-minute sessions, and I tend to insert those on Monday, where it's already a lighter day for running. So if I'm capping my Monday workout at approximately 50 minutes each Monday, then this lends itself perfectly to then dual as a 2 a day, where I would either run in the morning and then swim in the evening, or vice versa, just to break it up a little bit. But that is essentially the whole framework. Now, when you take exactly those days that I just mentioned to you, and then you apply your own level of the 3 things that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, so volume, intensity, and frequency, then you can really get creative and make your own plan and figure out exactly how much you should or shouldn't be working out based on your current fitness level. And trust me, if you do this for, say, 2 weeks, you may notice that your body just can't keep up. And that's a clear sign that you're not ready for this level of training, which is not a statement meant to dissuade you from anything. But if that's the case, then, no big deal. Like, there's really no sense in driving your body into the ground, where the simple solution may be to get an additional rest day or to reduce the number of intense days. That's where you're modulating the intensity so that you can work out more days in a row. What I would do then is, depending on what your weakest sport is, say between cycling and running, I would choose, which of those days you really think you should be adding those intervals and those sprints and those harder efforts. If you are a weak runner but also have a tendency to get injured when you run hard, there's no need to push it. If you're training to increase your endurance and train for something like an Ironman or a half Ironman or even a marathon, if you can't take the power output, then just reduce the intensity and optimize for volume and frequency. And if you're only training either running or cycling and you can take the intensity, then modify the frequency so that your body can recover between workouts. And that's why I'm mentioning that these are really the three main levers that you'll be pulling and playing with to get the results that you want. And honestly, the price for not paying for a coach or paying for a training plan is you have to get creative and be a little experimental and figure out what works for you on your own without any experience to back what you're feeling. And this is exactly what I did for my first Ironman, and it worked. And I finished my race and I got the race done and learned a lot. And I learned a lot that year. So don't think that there's only one way to accomplish this goal. There's many ways. Having a coach, however, is definitely an easier, more streamlined way to get this done. And that is what I learned in my second Ironman, where I did have a coach, and the performance was night and day, and the amount that I learned and the amount that I got done was night and day. But again, if you're new, if you're a beginner, you don't need to be spending the money. You can make your own plan. You can probably find some very good free plans online, but keep in mind that the only additional warning that I would want to give to somebody who may be trying to make their own plan is volume is one of the trickiest things to pay attention to when you're making your own plan, and you want to make sure that you are definitely not increasing your volume too quickly week over week, even day to day, but week over week. So if I run 10 miles this week, maybe next week I run 10 and a half. Some people say 1 to 2% every week. I don't think that's good for beginners. I think that's good if you have a very strong fitness foundation. So you might take a full 16 weeks to get to a comfortable 20 to 25 miles a week, and that's perfectly fine. But you're much better off doing it slowly than rushing it and getting injured. And that's the last additional pro tip that I would like to give for anyone still watching at this point. But thanks for listening. I hope you found some value in that. If you have any questions about making your own plan, just leave it in the comments. And if you like this video, please subscribe.